Everything you've always wanted to know about real estate, but didn't know who to ask. I'm your host, Angie Stanley. This week, our guests are Kenny Simpson. He is a real estate lender with residential wholesale mortgage. We also have Crystal Moore. She is a commercial mortgage broker with residential wholesale mortgage. We also have Mike Litton. He is a realtor and broker for Keller Williams Escondido. Our first guest, Kenny Simpson, is a lender. Hey, Kenny, how are you today?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing good, thanks for coming out. So tell me, Kenny, where do you see the lending industry today compared to last year?
I see the lending industry changing a lot, especially with loan-to-value guidelines, more opportunity out there for first-time home buyers to get in with less money down, more options than FHA and VA. So I see lenders stepping up and loan-to-values going up, so that's really going to help the purchase market out over the next year and moving forward.
Nice. So give me an idea. What were the loan to values last year compared to this year?
I don't think it's necessarily that much of that was different, but I think there's more options now out there. There's more lenders doing more loan to values, so it's out there more in the general public. Okay. But I would say that FHA, because the expenses are going up and a lot of people are trying not to do those loans all the time, that with conventional, you can do 3% down, for example, with conventional, but you can do 5% down with conventional with no mortgage insurance. So these options are coming out, and I think the market's really seeing that they need to step up and kind of have products for this type of client and these first-time home buyers.
Okay, well that's great news then. Yes, for buyers. And does that affect sellers at all, or?
No, I think it's great for everybody all around. I think it's really going to help the market out, and they need it too. It's something they need. So FHA doesn't want to do every mortgage, and there's more opportunity out there than just FHA now.
Nice. And then what about the rising home pricing? Does that affect the LTV?
No, I think it's just better for the seller. I think the rising home pricing is actually helping people that might have not been able to refinance a home that's in a higher interest rate. They have more value to their house, so sometimes people are paying down a little bit to get to 95% LTV where they can refi, or they have the right LTV now where they can refi. If they're not on a government loan, they can't do a HARP 2.0 or something like that. So it really does help that values are going up, because it's also helping the appetite for more real estate investors and companies like that to get out there and provide more financing, and it's going to help the growth of the economy and overall the growth of real estate too.
Well, that sounds like great news.
Yeah.
Now tell me, what is your opinion? Is today a good time to buy? Do you think it's going to get better? Do you think it's going to get worse?
I think today's a great time to buy. I think you have historically low interest rates, number one. You've got obviously still housing is still relatively reasonable to where we were at years ago. So I think it's a great time to buy. I think it's a tough time to buy too, because everybody wants to buy, and demand's high and inventory's low. So you have to really be prepared and ready. But I think I think that's why everybody's so excited. It's a great time to buy, a great time to get in.
Okay. Now I know the lending aspect of the transaction can be, sometimes the most difficult portion of it. Now when you say it's a hard time to maybe buy because the market is so low, what do you suggest to the people? Should you get your pre-approval letter, right before you buy? Should you get it well in advance?
I think you should get your pre-qual up front, but I think with the pre-qual, you need to make sure when you meet with a lender that they're really going through all your paperwork and getting everything. Because you want to make sure when you move forward and you proceed with that purchase that you can actually, they've looked at all your paperwork, all your documentation, and you can close on the loan. Especially if you're doing a short-tail transaction, you do have some time. So okay. I think it's very important to make sure you have everything dialed up front before you move forward and even start looking out there for a home. Yeah,
because it seems like, these pre-qual letters are so easy to get, and then the realtors are accepting the deals or for their clients, but then they get an escrow and it falls out because they actually aren't an approved buyer. Is there something that maybe a tip or some advice that you could give to maybe help to reduce that happening?
Absolutely. I think people, when they do go get pre-qualified, they need to make sure they are sending tax returns and W-2s and pay stubs and where the money is going to come from to the down payment, and also they're having their credit pulled, and then they're getting their file run through a D or LP, which is how they underwrite and how we upload a file to get back an answer approval or not. Okay. Because most people that are buying homes, the realtors, or if it's a short tail company, they're getting smarter and they have somebody that does a pre-qual on top of their pre-qual to make sure that this
wow.
stuff has been double checked. So
Okay.
when that person does go into escrow, they're not wasting anybody's time. And then this, obviously, if you don't close on a house, could go into foreclosure or something if they don't have the proper time to close. So I think
Exactly.
it's very important, and you want to make sure that the person that's checking your pre-qual stuff has gone through all your stuff, and that there's no hidden, anything hidden in there that can come back to bite you in the end.
And then make sure to keep all of that current and not let anything come on your credit during that time period. That
Absolutely.
seems to happen sometimes
Absolutely.
too. Okay. Now tell me real quick, Kenny, what got you into being a lender?
Yeah, actually, I always wanted to get into real estate. I loved it, and I still love it. And I think I just had an opportunity about 10 years ago to join a team, and I jumped in, and I just ended up loving it. Obviously, the market has changed a lot from the 10 years ago to now, but I'm glad I'm here, and I think the industry as a whole has really turned around, and I like where it's going. And with the regulations, and I feel like there's a lot more respect coming back into as being a loan officer, because we have to really take pride in what we do, and we're really regulated, on everything we do. So that's good for a consumer, and it's good for everybody, and it's good for moving forward with with the housing and economy as well.
Absolutely. So tell me, if you could give one tip of advice to someone that's looking to, give me a tip of advice for a buyer and a seller regarding lending.
Yeah, if you're going to be buying, like we talked about, the most important thing is make sure that somebody really did go through all your stuff. You're with a lender, or you're with a loan officer that has experience, that went through all your stuff, to make sure if there's any questions, you get them answered up front, not when you're halfway through a transaction, because it could end up ending the bad way. And then for a seller, I think it's important too that whoever's buying their house, that they can qualify for their house, and and make sure they're comfortable too.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Kenny. And coming up, we have Crystal. She is a commercial real estate broker, and she's going to tell us everything there is to know about the commercial real estate market these days.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kenny.
Okay, look forward to seeing you next time.
Welcome back to Smart Real Estate. We're joined by Crystal Moore. She is a commercial mortgage broker. Hi, Crystal. How are you today?
Hey, Angie, nice to see you.
Good. You too. Thanks for coming on. So tell me, how did you get into becoming a commercial mortgage broker?
Well, actually, my mom was an account executive for a bank, and I had always wanted to get into real estate. So when she finally gave her blessing, she referred me to a residential mortgage broker, and I started out in residential for about 3 or 4 months before I got an opportunity to do commercial.
Wow, 3 or 4 months, that's not a very long
Not
time,
very
though,
long
to
at
bridge
all.
over to commercial.
Not very long at all. I was always enamored with the sophistication of commercial transactions. So when I found the opportunity to break into that aspect of real estate, I took it.
Nice. And it's kind of a man's world out there in that industry, yeah?
I'm one of very few women in the industry,
That's
for
awesome,
sure.
though.
Yeah.
I love that. So tell me, the commercial real estate market, how was it last year compared to right now? Where do you see it going in the future?
Well, last year, the multifamily market was really booming, and it continues to boom today. It's definitely a seller's market. Prices are being driven up because there's not enough properties for the buyers that are out there.
Wow, that's great. And that's the way you see it continuing to
I
be?
see it continuing, and another thing that is increasing now is development opportunities. So I see a lot of, multifamily buildings going up, condo buildings, that sort of thing.
Nice. Now, okay, with investors, you're referring to the investor market. Someone that maybe has been investing in residential real estate but interested in becoming an investor on the commercial side, how feasible is that? Is that a smart move? How difficult is it to kind of move to the commercial investor side of things?
It's definitely a smart choice to go into commercial, but the financing is completely different. So if you're thinking about getting into that market, it's really smart to talk to a lender or a mortgage broker about the different aspects of financing versus residential, because there's definitely, we qualify more off cash flow than we do the actual borrower.
Okay.
So there are things to look at when, just determining how much cash down you're going to have, and the terms as well are different than, residential. There are prepays and shorter term fixed loans versus, a 30-year fixed.
Okay. And then what about, I always see, at least maybe a year ago or a couple years ago, all these vacant commercial buildings. Do you see that filling up in the next year or so? Is it becoming, harder to maybe get a commercial lease?
No, I'm seeing prices are starting to go up on commercial rentals, office, retail. Industrial's always been pretty strong, so that hasn't been hurt as much as the office and retail market. But now we're starting to see office space filling up, rents going up. The economy, believe it or not, is improving a bit, so there are new businesses opening. Existing businesses are expanding, so definitely the market is improving, and I see it continuing to improve moving forward.
So that's good news for someone that maybe is interested in investing in a commercial property to form residual income?
Absolutely, and there may be more opportunity there for appreciation and growth since the multifamily market is so saturated right now.
Okay, so supply and demand. So the demand is bigger than the supply right now?
There are a lot of people who would like to sell their commercial buildings, but because they've had the vacancy, they may be underwater, or it may not have made financial sense for them to sell. But now that things are improving, it makes sense for them to sell, and it's making sense for people to feel comfortable enough to buy.
Oh, okay, so that's good news. Now for the being a mortgage broker, someone that maybe is trying to get a commercial loan, what are, some of your tips or advice or things that you could maybe offer with your expertise as how to get qualified and how to move forward with something like that?
Well, it's really important to talk first with a lender or mortgage broker if you're thinking about purchasing a commercial property, especially if it's your first. Like I mentioned, it's definitely different than residential financing, so you still want to provide all of your financials to the lender or broker that you're working with. In addition, you want to provide maybe the contact information for your commercial agent, so that way we can take a look at the property information, because that's going to be really important as well. The condition of the property, the location of the property, the cash flow of the property, all those aspects are very important when considering which lender to go to and how much of a loan to value you can get.
So tell me the difference between, maybe what you do and the service you provide compared to one of your competitors.
Well, there's not too many competitors. The commercial mortgage broker market is pretty small. I tend to run into the same people, but the difference maybe between going directly to a bank versus a broker would be the relationship. If you go directly to a lender, they have a very specific box that you have to fit in, a menu of options, and if you don't fit within that box, then they can't do the deal for you. As a commercial mortgage broker, I have several relationships with different banks. I know their guidelines, I know who to take them to, so a borrower could really benefit from those relationships.
Nice. So to me, that sounds like you probably have people just knocking on your door.
Yeah, the phone rings, so that's good. It's taken about 10 years now, but it rings.
That's awesome. So you've been doing this for 10 years?
10 years.
Okay, so someone, that is interested in maybe becoming what you are and what you do, what kind of advice would you give? Is this something you would suggest?
Yeah, I would, but it's definitely a little tougher to get into, and that there's no real formal training for a commercial mortgage broker. So the best way to get into the business is really to maybe work under somebody who has the experience and learn it from the ground up with them.
Now, is there such thing like, with the investors nowadays doing where they go in and they flip the house and then they sell it? Does that happen with the commercial market or not really?
It's pretty common. So in determining if you're going to invest, what kind of property you're going to invest in, what your business model is going to be, there are, some people who want to buy just for cash flow, some people who are looking for value add opportunities. The qualifications are different again. So it's something that you want to discuss directly with your broker or lender.
Wow, okay, I didn't realize that. Well, thanks so much, Crystal, for coming on. Now give me one more piece of advice that you would offer to someone maybe interested in getting in, let's say, the commercial investment market.
Well, one thing to consider is that most lenders are going to want someone who has previous experience. So if you don't have prior experience, they may want you to put a little bit more down, and they may want you to have a professional property manager. So those are things that you want to look into prior to buying your first property.
Okay, so they definitely need to, make an appointment to come and chat with you and find out really what they'd be getting themselves
Definitely, and
into.
we walk everybody through the process.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Crystal, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
The information was great. So coming on up next, we're going to be talking with Mike Litton. He's a realtor and broker with Keller Williams Escondido, and we're going to talk about where he sees the REO market going these days. Joining us now, we have Mike Litton. He is a realtor and a broker with Keller Williams Escondido. Hi, Mike. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Thanks for coming on the show. So tell me, how did you become a realtor? What made you want to get into the industry, and how long have you been doing it?
Well, I've been in the real estate industry for 21 years, a little over 21 years. And I actually started out on the lending side, and I had so many of my clients that I helped get into their properties ask me to help them with the next property. And eventually the request became overwhelming, and I got to a point to where I needed to just wake up and do it. Okay. And so it was a really smooth transition for me. It was something that I absolutely have a passion for home ownership. Anybody that knows me knows that. And so it's something I absolutely love to do.
So you've been doing it for how long? You said 20 years?
I've been in the real estate industry for 21 years.
So you've definitely seen some waves along the waves in the past 20 years.
Yeah, my timing's impeccable. When I got into the business, we were literally going off a cliff in the real estate market. And so, you know, I learned how to scrap. I learned how to survive. I learned how to actually thrive in a down market. And that helped us in the last few years, because when the down market hit again, it was something that I went right back to what I learned. And it was a good deal. It was a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. We lost quite a few realtors, and
we did.
You know, a few years ago. So the fact that you were able to withhold and stand. Now tell me, so you are an REO specialist. What exactly is that, and how does that make you different from other realtors?
Well, it means I sell properties. REO stands for real estate owned. I sell properties for banks. Okay. So what happens is when a bank takes a property back by foreclosure, they then have to sell that property to try and recoup some of their losses, some of their money. And so what I do is I list those properties for them and I sell them.
So you are employed by the banks essentially? Or?
Well, I'm a listing agent for the bank. So just like a traditional seller would list their property with me, the bank lists their property with me.
Okay. Now is that, you know, comparatively speaking, last year to right now, have we got more REOs? Have we got less? Where is the REO market nowadays?
Compared to last year, we're up a little bit. Okay. Up a little bit, slightly. And we probably in the future will be up a little bit more in the next couple of years. There's a lot of shadow inventory on the ground in San Diego County. In fact, some estimates are there are 9,000 units on the ground in San Diego County that are what we call shadow inventory, which are bank-owned properties that just haven't made it to the market yet. And there are a number of different reasons. There are title issues, there are bankruptcy issues with the former owner. There are all kinds of things that potentially could cloud title. There are issues within the bank with regard to their records and that type of thing. Okay. So a lot of banks are working through a lot of that, and they're trying to get to a point to where they can get those properties on the market. So we probably will see an uptick. I don't think we'll feel it because we have such an overwhelming demand right now and such a low amount of inventory. REOs are just not staying on the market. They're literally being priced, and they're being priced at the top of the market, and we're seeing them leave in 6 days on the market.
Wow. Now, are most of these buyers, are they investors? Are they your traditional home buyers?
Most of them are investors, and I would recommend that investors primarily who have a track record and know what they're doing buy REOs. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that a regular traditional buyer buy one, only because there's no disclosure. The banks never lived in that property. They have absolutely no disclosure whatsoever as to anything that's happened before. There could have been a flood, there could have been any number of things that have happened, roof leaks, whatever, and the bank doesn't know anything about it. They can't tell you. And so it's a highly risky venture for somebody to go into that's a first-time buyer or somebody who's owned before, because it's just not a traditional transaction. There's way too much risk involved.
Wow. Now, are the banks more enticed to sell to these cash buyers, these all cash buyers?
They're absolutely more enticed to sell to these cash buyers, partly because banks avoid risk for a living. And so one of the things that they're trying to do is they're trying to sell to a cash buyer who then won't have any sort of lending restrictions with regard to inspections and termite and that type of thing. So investors that are cash investors, that's what a bank is looking for primarily.
Oh, okay. Now, someone that maybe is looking to get in the REO investment market, I mean, is it a good suggestion? Is it already very saturated with enough investors? What's your take on all of that?
Well, there are a lot of investors out there. It doesn't mean that you can't win as an investor. What I would suggest is know what you're getting into. In other words, if you're an investor and you're a first-time investor or second-time, that type of thing, if you're new to this, I would try to avoid REOs altogether. And the reason I would is because there's just too much risk involved. You don't know what you're getting into. You could have a cracked slab, not know about it. There's all kinds of things all kinds of areas where you could lose, tons of pitfalls. So for an experienced investor, absolutely would be something that I would look at. An experienced homeowner who's owned several homes and feels comfortable with that kind of risk, that's a different story. But somebody who's new to it, I would absolutely suggest that they go, if they do it, approach with caution.
Okay. Now tell me, what kind of advice would you tell someone that's facing a foreclosure, maybe on your realtor side of things? You know, someone that's maybe got a 90-day late or whatever it may be, and they're facing a foreclosure. what would your suggestion be?
Well, I would suggest that they know their options. A lot of people, just by human nature, feel like they've done something wrong. These homeowners feel like that they've done something to cause this. A lot of times, most of the time, this is something that's been done to them. This is a market that's shifted. It's something that they bought at the top of the market and now the market's, dropped and they owe more on their house than it's worth, that kind of thing. They've lost a job. They're underemployed. Like I talked to a gentleman the other day that's working 2 jobs, still not making what he used to make with his one full-time job. And he's working more hours. So this is something that's happened to them. This is an economy thing, right? A market thing. It's not them. So don't go into your shell. Let's listen to somebody who's trustworthy. Listen to somebody who knows what they're doing, who has experience in this business, that can sit down with them and help them with their options. If they're looking to do a loan modification, go to NACA.com, NACA.com. Okay. If they're looking to do a short sale, I'll be more than happy to work with them and be more than happy to help them with their options. If they're looking to do a refinance, there's a thing called HARP 2.0. In fact, Kenny mentioned it earlier. That's something where a lender can actually lend and do a refinance for somebody who's actually upside down, who actually owns more on their home than it's worth.
Okay. So your suggestion would definitely be to seek professional advice,
Absolutely.
A realtor, a lender, a professional, not just looking online and maybe reading the latest blogs of what they think's going on.
Yeah, I would stay off the internet. What I would do is sit down with somebody who's been there and done that, and I absolutely have, where you can sit down with them and go through their options and find out what's best for them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mike. The insight has been amazing.
My pleasure.
I would like to thank our guests for joining us today, and we would encourage you, if you have any questions or comments, to email us at the email address below. And again, thanks for tuning in to Smart Real Estate. Everything you've always wanted to know about real estate, but just weren't sure who to ask.